State Government Committee is called to order. This meeting of the House State Government Committee is called to order. Before we get started, if everybody could please rise. Representative Dush, would you lead us in the pledge, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Motion by Representative Ryan. Call up House Bill 722, seconded by Representative Hill. Motion by Representative Ryan to call up Amendment A06279, seconded by Representative Whelan. If I could ask my staff to explain, Michael to explain the amendment, please.
Amendment A06279 would amend House Bill 722. The amended House Bill 722 would amend Article 2, Section 17 of the Pennsylvania Constitution to provide for the Legislative and Congressional Reapportionment Commission to be comprised of 6 legislators, one of whom would be a senator elected by the majority caucus of the Senate, one of whom would be a senator elected by the minority caucus of the Senate, one of whom would be a senator elected by the entire membership of the Senate, one of whom would be a representative elected by the majority caucus of the House, one of whom would be a representative elected by the minority caucus of the House, and one of whom would be elected by the full membership, who would be a representative elected by the full membership of the House. The commission would select the chair from the full membership, and a vote of 5 commissioners would be required to adopt an act. After the commission is impaneled and receives necessary census data, it will create a preliminary reapportionment plan. After a public comment period, it will create a revised reapportionment plan and will vote to adopt. If the revised plan is not adopted, the process will repeat with another comment period and another vote to adopt. If the final plan is not adopted by the commission, it shall submit the revised and final plans, as well as any complete plans on which it is voted, to the General Assembly. The General Assembly shall vote to adopt one of these maps without amendment. If the General Assembly does not vote to adopt the plans, the Commonwealth Court shall proceed to reapportion the Commonwealth on the Commission. Any person aggrieved by an adopted plan may file an appeal to the Commonwealth Court. If the court finds the plan contrary to law, it shall remand the plan to the Commission to be reapportioned in accordance with such order. Finally, Amendment 06279 would amend Article 2, Section 16 of the Pennsylvania Constitution to remove language governing criteria for legislative and congressional districts. The revised Section 16 would provide exclusively for the number of legislative districts in the General Assembly. These criteria would be reconsolidated within Section 17. The consolidated criteria would govern both the consideration of the Commission and the judgment of any court weighing the resulting map, or creating their own map in the contingency process. That criteria would be expanded to require districts to be nearly as equal in population as practicable, to maintain the geographic integrity of any county, municipality, school district, or ward, unless absolutely necessary to provide such, to be geographically contiguous, to be drawn in consideration of geographic compactness, to be drawn in consideration of the integrity of communities and interests, and to be drawn without regard to partisan balance or voter efficiency. Finally, after the first maps are adopted under the amended process, subsequent reapportionment commissions may consider the existing boundaries of districts to provide for consistency and endurance of communal lives.
Thank you, Michael. We've had a lot of lobbying of my office, of my colleagues, on redoing the way that we redistrict in Pennsylvania. And I've heard a lot of talk about a Citizens Commission. The House Bill 722 sets up an unaccountable commission of citizens not elected by their fellow citizens, but ultimately appointed. There is no greater citizens commission than the General Assembly of this state. Every one of us has to meet the constitutional requirement to run for office of first being a citizen of the state of Pennsylvania for 4 years, resident of our district for a year. We elect citizens to this General Assembly body, and I think the best way to make sure we have a citizens actually being the ones redrawing, citizens who are held accountable to their fellow citizens who elect them to office, and that they're not just going to go away after the work is done, that they can be accountable in the future for their decisions, is to totally gut and replace this bill with the amendment that is now before us, and it was just explained by Michael. I think if you truly want this done by the citizens, then I think the best way is to make sure those citizens are elected, not appointed, not put through a process where they can change their voter registration and be considered independents 3 years later so they can be appointed and somebody can try and rig what kind of maps are going to come out, which would give us probably maps similar to what the Supreme Court just unconstitutionally foisted upon us. On the amendment, Representative Bradford.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Respectfully, I think in the last couple minutes we've heard about how accountable and transparent this legislative body is and how that's preferable to what's proposed in House Bill 722. And I think it would be great to have an opportunity to debate House Bill 722, the pros, the cons, the good, the bad, the ugly. I think it's all in there, and I think it's all worthy of discussion. But let me tell you about how this legislative body proposes to amend the Constitution.
Representative Bradford, just if you could suspend, I'll let you start up again. If I could ask our member secretary to take the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Metcalf.
Here.
Representatives Barrar,
We have a proxy for Representative Barrar.
Dush, Grove,
Here.
Hill, here, Knowles,
Here.
Miller, Roy,
Here.
Ryan, Saccone, Sankey, Stats, Walsh, Ward, Wieland. Chairman Bradford. Representatives Bullock,
Here.
Daley,
Here.
Delicio, Dean, Fitzgerald, McCarter,
Proxy.
Rabb, Sims, Solomon, Vasquez.
Proxy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative Hill. Motion by Representative Ryan once again to call up House Bill 722, seconded by Representative Wieland. Motion by Representative Ryan to call up Amendment A06279, seconded by Representative Wieland. Representative Bradford to continue. Thank you.
Thank you. As I was saying about the accountability and transparency of this committee and what a legislative body brings to bear on this issue, I would note House Bill 722, the underlying legislation, has never been given an opportunity for hearing. And I think there is much to be discussed on House Bill 722. It proposes to amend our Constitution. And I would also note that now we have an amendment to said bill without a hearing. But let me tell you, the citizens of Pennsylvania, you're not the only ones who've never seen this amendment. I've never seen this amendment. The minority party has never seen this amendment. We propose today to amend the Constitution. The majority would hoist upon the minority an amendment that has never been seen by the minority. You see what that looks like. That doesn't look like transparent and accountable. I would say to the majority, this is not worthy of an amendment to the state constitution. I would note to those who are watching today that this committee meeting must end by 11 o'clock. So what we propose to do, and I will continue to use the chairman's words, accountable and transparent, in an accountable and transparent way without the minority ever having a hearing on the underlying bill and never having seen the amendment, we propose to amend the Constitution by 11 o'clock. We can do by lunch what the Marines can't do by 5 a.m. That's from a member of the majority party. and I adore Representative Ryan. And he knows that what we propose to do right now is not worthy of this body, the process, the countless activists who have gone for days and weeks and months. And let's be clear, I do not agree with everything in the underlying legislation. But here's what I know. This process is broken. If you need any greater testament, look at what will happen by 11 a.m. today. Or if we're lucky, we'll get it recessed and we'll come back for 15 minutes later this afternoon. And we will do to the Pennsylvania Constitution what the majority sees fit in what is being called a transparent and accountable process. The minority will have never had an opportunity to review the bill. The people will never have had a hearing. The folks that are in the hallway that are unable to come in will never able to even see the process go down. It is not worthy of the process. And I would say this on the substance of the amendment. and I hate to speculate, and the good gentleman gave a very good synopsis for what you can for amending the Constitution in 2 minutes. I think what I heard was the majority party will have 3 members in the House and Senate. Now, there'll be 3 members from both the House and the Senate, 2 of which will be from the majority party.
Well, there'll be 1 from each caucus, 3 from each chamber, 1 voted at large in each chamber.
So the majority party would likely control that 3rd member.
Well, not guaranteed. Not guaranteed.
Hold on, folks.
Not guaranteed.
I don't want you all thrown out.
But the maps will have to be adopted by 5 of 6, which would be the minority would need.
And
to
if they
vote
can't come to an agreement, the 5 of 6?
then they'd be brought before the full chambers to consider what their work products were.
And a majority of the majority would then?
Majority of the citizens elected by the 13 million citizens of Pennsylvania, yes.
Yeah, that sounds to me.
If the audience is going to be disruptive, you'll be removed. So there's no opportunities for the audience to talk. You're here to listen with your ears, not talk with your mouth, please.
Right. And I would say this to the folks, and I would ask for their willingness, because we're literally going to get 15 minutes. I know that in the legislature, we require local governments to take public comment. We don't do that for ourselves. So just understand, the legislature takes a different view. We typically do that through public hearings, and we give time for the individuals to be heard on this. That's not what we're doing today, so I understand your frustration. But if we're going to go through this charade for the next 14 minutes, let us at least try to understand what the majority plans to do, what this Republican majority plans to do to rig this election this November. So let me get this straight. The majority will then vote in the House and Senate, and if they concur, will the governor have to sign onto that?
First, Representative Bradford, this has nothing to do with this November's elections. This, of course, is a constitutional amendment, would have to be passed by the citizens of Pennsylvania would actually have to adopt this to our Constitution in 2 consecutive sessions. So the rigging done for this November's election has been done by the Supreme Court adopting Democrat maps for the congressional races this year. That's the rigging that's been done and foisted upon the people of Pennsylvania.
Right.
What was the second part to your question?
Do you want to rig the 2022 election?
No, I think the courts have already attempted, and we're expecting more mischief from them. That's why we're trying to remove them from this process totally, to where they don't even get to appoint the 5th commissioner any longer, that we're actually going to make sure that the elected representatives who are elected every 2 years instead of up for retention votes every 10 years, it creates unaccountable judges, that we're actually the ones that would elect those people to represent the citizens as fellow citizens on a real citizens commission.
Respectfully, I think the impeachment proceedings is next week's circus.
If I'm given the resolutions, we will be doing that pretty speedily.
So let us get back to what you're proposing in terms of the majority in the House and Senate would have to pass that. Would the governor have to agree with the maps that the House and Senate pass? After all, we're amending the Constitution. I'm sure we've thought this all through.
The General Assembly would vote to approve one of the maps without amendment. The governor would not be involved.
The governor would not be involved.
So that's a way to fix the problem we have with Wolf, also backing up the Supreme Court's
The governor,
unconstitutional actions.
Okay. Respectfully, I'm going to refer to you as chairman. We're going to refer to the governor as governor. And now, so the governor's cut out of the process. What role do the courts have in determining whether we have complied with the Voting Rights Act and the federal constitutional requirements, such as due process, one man, one vote?
Michael, can you cite the section of the amendment, please?
Any aggrieved individual may file an appeal to an adopted plan with the Commonwealth Court, and if the Commonwealth Court finds that plan contrary to law, it would remand the plan to the Commission to be reapportioned, not in violation of that order.
And I apologize, I was concurring with counsel, so it's my bad. Can you repeat that, sir?
Any aggrieved person may file an appeal to an adopted plan with the Commonwealth Court. If the Commonwealth Court were to find that plan contrary to law, it would remand the plan to the Commission to be reapportioned, not in violation of that order.
And so just so you understand, I mean, the governor doesn't currently sign off on the Legislative Reapportionment Commission plan when our maps are drawn currently. So the attempt by 722 was to draw congressional redistricting into a commission as we have the current state legislative districts done by a commission. So we figured, since that's what they were doing, we would keep that line of thought going and not have the governor included in signing off on the congressional plan either, like he doesn't sign off on our current legislative plan for the House and Senate seats in the state legislature. Another question? Or?
Would an appeal from the Commonwealth Court make its way at any point to the Supreme Court, or are we stripping jurisdiction of the Supreme Court, or we're saying they have no role whatsoever?
I mean, the language that we've drafted, from my understanding of it, doesn't strip them of the ability at some point if it was appealed to them. They're not included in the specific language for jurisdiction, but I don't think the language would preclude them from hearing an appeal.
Can I ask the good gentleman, why Commonwealth Court?
Why not?
Why not the Montgomery County Court of Common Pleas?
Well, it's your county. We certainly wouldn't pick Montgomery. Maybe Butler, not Montgomery.
So I asked why the Commonwealth Court, because that's what's in the bill.
Next question.
No, why the Commonwealth Court? I mean, that was a serious question. We are really amending the Constitution by 11 o'clock.
Representative Grove wants to answer you.
If I'm not mistaken, the Commonwealth Court is the court of first reprieve for intergovernmental conflict. So there was a point where the members of the General Assembly did sue Governor Wolf over PERC. That's always handled at the Commonwealth Court level. So as this would be in a intergovernmental conflict, it would start off with the Commonwealth Court.
And again, I've not argued in front of Commonwealth Court, but have had matters that have gone to Commonwealth Court. Obviously, any aggrieved party in Commonwealth Court, though, appeals to the Supreme Court. Does this propose that an appeal is still taken to the Supreme Court?
The language, it basically goes to the Supreme Court or the Commonwealth Court. The Commonwealth Court will refer back to the legislature. It doesn't take away any jurisdiction out of the Supreme Court. So appeals will probably still stand.
Yeah, if I could, Mr. Chairman, let me make a suggestion here with all due respect, and I realize time is close and we're going to quickly run out of time. My thought is we should do a motion to postpone. I would ask for a hearing in the interim. I would ask for the willingness of the chair. I know Representative Samuelson is here. Typically, we let the maker of a bill that we're bringing up for consideration discuss his position. My thought is a motion to postpone is certainly appropriate. I think most of the majority, I think most of the folks who are watching this process realize that is antithetical to anything coming close to accountable and transparent. And I think what the right thing to do is to have a public hearing, to have a real process. I see what is going on with the Senate with, I believe it's Senator Fulmer. Senator Fulmer and his committee in the Senate, which at least has the courtesy of proposing public hearings and input and a discussion about an issue of this much public scrutiny. So my suggestion is at this point I'll make a motion to postpone until April 17th, 2018. That'll give us sufficient time to have a public hearing, to have discussion, that hopefully we do not rush to amend our Constitution by lunch. I don't think that is worthy of the process. I don't think it's worthy of the dedicated individuals who've put this issue on the public radar. No matter how aggrieved the majority may feel by the ruling of the Supreme Court, the rule of law still has meaning in this country, in this Commonwealth, and we should not go down this path so flippantly, so lightly, and without any sense of accountability or transparency. So with that, I make a motion and I ask for the majority and the minority's member in supporting this motion.
Mr. Chairman, I second that motion.
Motion made by Representative Bradford, second by Representative Sims. Representative Hill called the roll. I oppose the motion to postpone.
Chairman Metcalf.
No.
Representatives Barrar,
Roxy, no.
Dush, Grove, Hill, no. Knowles,
No.
Miller, Roy, Ryan, Saccone, Sankey, Stats, Walsh, Ward, Wheeland, Chairman Bradford,
Yes.
Representatives Bullock,
Yes.
Daley, Delicio, Dean, Fitzgerald, McCarter,
Proxy, yes.
Rab, Sims, Solomon, Vasquez.
Proxy, yes.
Mr. Chairman, the motion fails.
Thank you, Representative Hill. We have the amendment before us to House Bill 722. Representative Ryan.
There's a great deal of discussion that always comes out about what's fair and what's not. And whenever bills get proposed as a freshman in the legislature and someone who's new to this process, and obviously, as you can look at me, I'm elderly in life, but I say it from this process and this concept, it's that bills that get proposed don't always necessarily see the light of day because in many cases they're not sound. I'm a certified public accountant, and this bill is designed to fail and usurp the rights of Pennsylvanians. This bill is designed to make certain that the Supreme Court makes decisions. I hear comments about the rule of law, and I'm someone that has not only had to read a Constitution, I've had to defend it. I've been in harm's way, and many times I'm a retired Marine colonel. And I'm offended that someone believes that 7 people on the Supreme Court can make a decision that 13 million people have had as a right of citizens to make decisions. When you look at the underlying bill, and I have a tremendous respect for the maker, but I don't agree that the bill's sound. And when I've gone back and talked to other people after getting intense pressure from people saying there's over 100 signatures, and I've read the bill, and the bill's a bad bill. It creates a situation where it usurps the responsibilities and the rights of 13 million Pennsylvanians. And while it may feel good for some people to do this at certain times, I will merely remind everybody that a Supreme Court in the United States at one time thought a Dred Scott decision was a good decision. I can remember situations in which bills have gotten done and laws have been passed where the rights of citizens have been hurt. And we have a responsibility. When I took an oath of office to support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America as a Marine, I took one as well in the legislature. And that responsibility in the legislature is already in the legislature, saying it's the right and the responsibility of the legislature, not the Supreme Court, to issue a map. All they had to do was return it to the Supreme Court. And on this amendment,
On the amendment, Representative Ryan.
we need to make certain that this amendment keeps the power within the hands of the legislature and the people of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania.
Thank you, Representative Ryan. Representative Delicio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning. I did some quick math, and I'm sure somebody will correct me if I'm wrong. As I understood the amendment correctly, 6 legislators in total will be
That's correct.
participating. Those 6 legislators, 3 from the Senate, 3 from the House, will represent they've been elected to office by about 561,000 constituents. Senate districts are about 125,000, give or take. State rep districts are about 62,000, give or take. That's 4.5% of the population of Pennsylvania, given that there's used 12.7 million as the population. So when we talk about accountability, my concern is that, in fact, those legislators who would be tasked with this event are accountable to they're accountable to way less than, as a group, they're accountable to 4.5% of the citizens of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Unless I'm one of those legislators, I would have no way of being held accountable for those votes. Interestingly enough, my colleague from Lebanon County brought up the PA Supreme Court. Currently, our appellate courts are elected, not merit selection, a discussion for another day, I hope, personally. And those 7 people who sit on that most supreme court are indeed elected, and they are elected statewide. So they are accountable to 12.7 million people. So I'm not in agreement with the amendment currently before us. As the minority chair stated, it was put here, and I'm a fast reader, but nobody could be that fast. So I just put that out for people's consideration. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Representative Delicio. If I could ask our member secretary to call the vote, please, on the amendment.
Chairman Metcalf.
Yes.
Representatives Barrar,
Proxy, yes.
Dush, Grove.
Yes.
Hill, yes. Knowles.
Yes.
Miller, Roy,
Yes.
Ryan.
Yes.
Saccone, Sankey, Stats, Walsh, Ward, Wieland. Chairman Bradford.
No.
Representatives Bullock.
No.
Daley.
No.
Delicio. Dean. Fitzgerald. McCarter.
Proxy, no.
Rabb. Sims. Solomon. Vasquez.
Proxy, no.
Mr. Chairman, the amendment passes 15 to 11.
Thank you, Representative Hill. The bill is amended. We'll go over for the day. Motion adjourned by Representative Walsh, seconded by Representative Dush. This meeting is adjourned.